Hi, I'm Caleb Nussear. I'm a sculptor based in Brooklyn, New York, and I work with folded paper patterns and generally geometric patterns. Yes, so what I'm demonstrating today is the Nussear Ori folding pattern, which I have various examples of my work in progress here in the studio that utilize this pattern. So I'm folding in half, make a nice crease, and then I reverse the crease, so you have a nice hinge. And then this is a mountain fold, and this would be a valley fold.
And this language comes out of the origami
Yes.
tradition?
Meaning like a mountain fold is like up and a valley fold is down. These I make reversible, but in the actual, you don't want to have two mountain folds next to one another. It's always, they alternate. So I go 4, and in this one, to demonstrate, I'm just going to do, then I bisect these again. I'm just going to do, basically you match a mountain fold to a mountain fold, like that, to bisect it. Match a mountain fold to a mountain fold. And that makes it very easy to do. So that's half the sheet. I'm going to repeat the process here. So then to do that, again, I have a mountain fold here. The valley I'll reverse to a mountain and then bisect it. And then we're going to go again. So we have a nice little vertical accordion. I'm going to go through and reverse every one of these folds so it hinges properly.
Meaning it can go either way.
It can go either way,
Like
exactly. That one I already did. That's important in the next part of the process. So now we've got the sheet folded. There's 8 sections. And then we crush it up again into the accordion. And then you want to take the edge of it and just make a half turn. Basically do a 45 right here. This is pretty thick paper, so I'm going to go ahead and use my straight edge, or I prefer a bone folder, but something to just kind of make that crease sharp. Then when you unfold it, you can see the impressions of the fold you made. This part was in the middle, so it's nice and sharp. This part was at the edge, so it's rather blunt because the paper's thick, but that's fine. And then you will just go like that. So that's sort of the key thing to do there. And because you set up that crease, it happens fairly easily. And you just try to match the edges and keep them neat. Although if you don't, that's fine too. Okay, so now we've got this. And now we want to fold like this. So I'm doing the same thing, but in reverse. So once I did my 45-degree turn, I'm going to do it again. So it's a repetitive process. We get it out and unfold it, and again you've got the same thing. Okay, so this is where reversing the ladder is important. So you want to like go back to nothing, and then every mountain becomes a valley and vice versa. So the first one is always easy. The second one is hard, and the third one's hard. And as this pattern comes down the sheet, it becomes a lot easier. But this is probably the hardest moment in folding this pattern. So don't be discouraged. if you're trying this. And then see, I'm basically using my hands to hold the pattern and put the crease pattern in. And then once we've got those folds, we compress them and, you know, make them nice and sharp. These can come back, and then you got your start. See how nice and sharp they are. So then we got that. We'll do it once more. Unfold, flip over, go like that. So and then we're going to reverse again. And now that I've got a couple of folds in, it holds its shape and it goes a lot quicker. Boom. Reverse, go like that. And you start to get a rhythm going.
And what is this folding pattern called again?
This is called the Miura Ori, and it's named after a Japanese astrophysicist, Koryo Miura, who discovered this pattern in the 1980s. And this pattern, you can actually find it in you can find it in the art world, in my work and some other artists, but you can also find it, they use it in NASA for the solar panels that they power satellites with in space are folded up in this pattern because it's a space-saving pattern. You can pack it flat in the satellite, and then when you get out to space, you can unfold it.
Do you know which folding technique they use for like the James Webb satellite for the big sail?
That one, I just read about that in the Times, and I have a picture of it on my phone. But it's a hexagonal pattern, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know the name of it.
Okay.
But they're all like, you know, Miura folding patterns. I don't know the specific name of that one, although I can think of the actual crease pattern in my head. But there's a lot of variations on these patterns. I happen to use 4 of them in my work. But there's, I'm not going to say infinite, but there's many, many, many variations. You can also make them irregular by changing this interval. It doesn't have to be regular, and you can change this interval, which could be, you know, you could make different types of lines. You can make curves. But all of those things are a bit harder to fold, but they're not impossible to fold. And after I finish this, which is probably, given the thickness of the paper, I couldn't do any this is like 8 sections in this fold. I couldn't do a 16 or a 32 or a 64. But I do those in my work, and we'll get onto that momentarily.
And sometimes you pre-score all of these, right, for bigger paper?
Exactly, yeah. So the ratio of the cell size to the sheet of paper, if you want to have a really large piece of paper with, you know, 128 cells in it, yeah, you can't fold it this way because the paper is too thick. You would just have to pre-score it, and we're going to look at that next. So I'm just going to finish up these little nibs at the end. That's the chevron Miura, the most basic one. And it's gone from, you see how it's also compressed substantially from the sheet of paper. Originally it was that big.
Oh.
And it compresses. You can turn it around. But it does have, like, you know, it bends very easily this way not so much. You can torque it, saddle shape. There's a lot of things you can do with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is the same pattern I demonstrated, the chevron pattern, but this is a much smaller cell size, a much larger sheet of paper. So I have gone through and folded this in a ladder form already, and reversed it, and you can see there's 128, I think, or maybe it's 64, I don't know what the count is, but they're quite small, they're only a half inch. This is the back side, so this is what I have to do after I do the ladder, is make perpendicular lines going perpendicular to the ladder fold, and then start basically drawing out the crease pattern, which is a laborious process. So this I've just started to draw out one section of it, and eventually there'll be stacking chevrons, V's, and then I will go and score that with a bone folder. So once that's done, I'm just going to take this one away. This is what happens, and this is something that I've started applying pastel to and colored pencil and turning it into a drawing that I will frame. It's in process right now, it's not finished, but this is the folding part is done, and you can see this is those chevrons are all articulated in the piece. And this is flat on the table, but it does have a beautiful way of compressing, because there is tension in the paper. So you can get three-dimensional forms, although it is paper, so it is still delicate. I like to work those forms, but yes, in the past I've worked with choreographers moving the forms around and playing with them. There are a lot of possibilities to it. But this one, when I finish it, it'll be framed, and it'll have three-dimensionality, but it'll be fixed on a mounting bracket in the frame, so it'll be static once I figure out what the... So this is a frame drawing, a finished frame drawing that's been exhibited. This is the diamond form, which is a variation on the chevron, but instead the form goes in and out. So you form these diamonds. It's like the sort of the chevron version, just a little more complicated. But the majority of my framed work I use this form with. Well, now I can go to the... Put this one back. Ready? Mm-hmm. Okay. So this final form is what's called the water bomb Miura, and it's maybe the most exciting form, although you can see it kind of rests in a very three-dimensional way. So I don't frame these, I've used them with dance choreography, but this is, they're pretty cool. The color in this one is just fabric dye that I, basically threw fabric dye and water at this piece and let chance basically achieve the coloration, but it has a lot of potential. And this pattern has also been used sparingly in some fashion as a pleating pattern. There is a place in Manhattan that does this pattern pleating, so you could make a dress out of this, for example, or a skirt. But it has a lot of. It is like holding a water bomb. It's like a very parabolic form. And this piece that I'm holding, when I folded it, it was a 4 by 8 foot sheet of paper. So it's quite a bit smaller now because there's so much compression in the fold. But yeah, very beautiful form.